Okay, good Monday, everyone. Welcome to Mondays with Manny. I'm your host, Manny Rodriguez, and this is a live cast where we're discussing common problems organizations face and how to deal with them using science. Special thanks to Business Science Magazine, 305 Publishing, the OBM Alliance, and my teammates at Bueno Ventures. And today I have a special guest, Alicia Parr, founder and principal of Perform Mentor. I'll have her introduce herself in just a little bit. And today we're going to be talking about a very special topic around teams and how to support teams working in a very uncertain time, right? So now we will be taking questions from the live audience, and we have quite a bit of people today. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us live for this live cast. We will be taking your questions at the end, but those questions and answers will not be recorded. That's very special just for you for joining us this morning. So thank you very much. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with Mondays with Manny. So Alicia, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Now,
Happy
please,
Monday.
happy Monday. That's right. So to get us started, what I like to do is just kind of have you do kind of your elevator pitch of who you are, your background, and Perform Mentor. So do you mind sharing with the audience?
Yeah. Well, I have a deep background in human resources. I've always imagined myself more of a scientific and an engineering mindset. So a little over 4 years ago, I founded Perform Mentor, which is basically applied people science or behavior science, as I later learned it's also called, or OBM. And we have grown quite a bit. So we provide what I call fractional full stack HR for growth businesses, usually between about 10 or 150 employees. And we use applied behavior science as well as HR expertise and help them grow and solve hard problems that come up.
All right. Well, if that's not a great elevator pitch, I don't know what is, because that was perfect. And
Okay.
so, so today we wanted to talk about teams and really, communicating with teams during these tough times. And your team at Perform Mentor, you're doing a lot of great work with organizations during this tough time. And so, I kind of wanted to give you the starting point and kind of share with us, why is this such an important topic? Why discuss this today?
It's Well, the reason why I suggested the topic, and I think you're probably already thinking about it already based on the response that I got, is that what I noticed and what was necessary over these past few weeks is, first of all, we had to get into a really reactive posture. And so when I say we, I mean Perform Mentor, and I mean all of our clients and basically all small business owners and founders all over the place, because we don't know what's happening. We don't know what the consequences are. We didn't know what the legislation was. That was constantly changing. And then once we knew the legislation, we didn't know the guidance yet. And I would say that that story is still being painted a little bit. But as we go, what we find is that because we're so in a reactive mindset as business leaders, sometimes we might forget that part of our job is to paint a longer view picture and to keep the team together and not get so anxious because not only do we not know what's going on, a lot of people who might be able to come together physically and see each other and stay connected that way, that's no longer viable. It can't happen, with these pandemic situations where we have work at home, stay at home requirements. So what I've learned is that we need to use our communication skills and really speak to why staying together, how do we keep things together, because in order to get through something really difficult, it requires a lot of reminders of why we're doing this, and to not get caught up by the very normal and expected anxieties that are going to beset each and every person that's a member of an important team.
So I completely agree with you. And one of the things that I know that you had it written down, and I would love to share with it now with the audience, and then you also offered some communication tips, some 7 tips. So I wanted to first ask, you identified, I think it was 3 different book references that really kind of form all of this thinking and your approach to this. So could you share with the audience those 3 references? And
Yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
put them in the chat room for the live audience, and then for those that are watching the recording, I'll splash it on the screen so people will get it.
Yeah. So I've made quite a study in persuasion and influence over the past several years. It's very important being able to do what you and I, well, we all do. And Robert Cialdini, and you'll get the spelling in the notes, but he has two key books. One of them is Influence. Highly worth reading. More recently, he wrote a book called Persuasion, which is also how do you set the stage so that when you are trying to influence folks, you're off on the right foot. So priming, and I think there's probably some behavior science terminology that underpins that. But he's also a good marketer, obviously. So the other book is The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. And I am still in the early stages of reading that one, but I'm finding it to be a really good supplement in addition to the Cialdini books.
All right, great. Well, so thank you for those. And the reason I do that is, we only do Mondays with Manny 20, 30 minutes. So it's always nice to like leave people with things to also follow up on. And like you, I am a bookworm. I like reading and I like absorbing information that I can. So fortunately, that's why I do it. That's why I like to bring in these resources. So thank you for that. Everybody that's in the live chat, you can see those book suggestions by Alicia right there. So all right, so let's break it down. So I know that for me as a consultant working with clients, um, especially the last couple of weeks in particular, formulating messages, really understanding who you're speaking to and how are they going to react, almost like predicting how they're going to react. It's very touch and go. It's almost unprecedented, the type of emotional responses which people are getting nowadays. We've seen it in the past, but I've never seen it to this extent in myself, things that I couldn't predict, even if I wanted to, if I had a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things you've done nicely is you have these like 7 kind of guidelines or tips around communicating with the team during tough times. And I would love for you to, just kind of walk everybody through those 7 tips. Would you mind?
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I would say even it's a process. Or a lot of times, clients are like, make sure you talk to your team and make sure you're communicating in a way that brings everyone together and keeps everyone a little more centered than they would otherwise. And they say, well, how do I do that? And I'm like, there is a process. If you follow this recipe or this formula, your result and the outcomes you're going to get are going to be much, much better. So, so I'll just go through those steps one at a time, and we can, talk about them
Yep.
or clarify them as we go if we need to. First of all, you open up your communication by reaffirming what your beliefs, your principles, and your values are. And of course, if you have done some pre-work as a leader and you already know what your core values are as a business, you already know what principles, you already know what you believe in, then you are just restating the things that you have been saying all along. And that gets everyone on the right foot and out of reactive moment and into kind of what's our bigger purpose. Number 2, look what we've accomplished up until this point. We have done great things together. So it's not just where are we today. Let's remember that we have done some really great things in the past. Step 3, acknowledge near-term and current challenges. Like, don't put a happy face on stuff that's hard. If it's hard and it's bad, just say, you know what, it's hard, it's bad, I get it. Because if you try and just gloss things over, you'll just completely lose credibility. Step 4, reemphasize that we are one. We are in this together. It is by doing things together, we are going to get through this together, no matter hard or bad it is. Step 5, create a really believable image of the future. And this is a really, I think this is one of the steps that gets easily forgotten. Talk about what it's going to look like on the other side, even if we don't know what the timeline is. If we get through this together, then imagine how much stronger we're going to be. Imagine the kind of innovation. Yes, things are changing, but we're going to be a stronger, more effective business, or be able to even more clearly live through our purpose and our values on the other side of this. And that gives somebody something for everyone to aim for. something to hang on to no matter how hard or uncertain things get. Step 6, by adhering to our principles, so back to our principles and our core values and sticking together, we're going to build that better future together. And then at the end, gratitude. Sincere gratitude, actually. So sometimes folks might feel like, well, if I follow this formula, it's going to come off as disingenuous. Well, you should never talk about values that you don't hold and that you don't put into practice. You should never express gratitude that you don't sincerely feel, but always find those opportunities to actually express what you already are feeling. And if you do that, then the reaction that you will get from the communication is going to be way beyond anything you've ever imagined. And the team's going to come together, and that is your best shot. There's no guarantee you're going to get through this, hole on the other side of things. But if you do this kind of communication, and if you keep having this sort of communication with your team, that is your best shot.
So I added those 7 points, the 7 formula process points on the chat room, and you already got quite a buzz. A couple of folks, already thanking for inviting them here today. And one person says, "Say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean." Right?
That's right.
So, well said, Judy. Well said. There's a couple of points I wanted to kind of emphasize or kind of talk about with you, just kind of openly, and then we'll wrap up the Mondays with Manny and open it up to Q&A for the live audience. We had quite a live audience today, so I really appreciate everybody joining us. But there's 2 things I wanted to kind of hit on from the 7 formula points, and I like that that's called a formula. So the first one is the number 1. So affirming and reiterating beliefs, principles, and values. And I could say, I think that's not only important, I think it also connects to something that a lot of companies put a lot of time and effort into, which is their beliefs, principles, and values, but they don't always connect the dots on the day-to-day business, on what they communicate or how they give feedback. It's almost like they work so hard in it to develop those things, but then they lose sight of the fact that that's what they're there to achieve. That's what they believe in. Those are the things that they follow, those principles. And so can you give some examples, or maybe some examples of how you help clients connect those dots when they communicate with their team? What does it look like, for
Yeah.
connecting those dots?
Well, over the weekend, I'll give you a really recent example. We've got a number of clients, some of which can't work completely remote, and some of which are essential businesses. So they have to remain open, and they want to remain open. Of course, they're adapting their practices. And so there's been, of course, face masks has been quite a hot topic. And if they're not the N95 level, are they even worth using? And so there was a little bit of that debate. It's like, well, I've got this brother-in-law. So one of the managers, I've got this brother-in-law, and he's a doctor, and he's got credibility, and he says it's not worth using any masks. And so the question is like, who needs how many masks at the different facilities? And so I helped reframe that kind of like, well, how do I deal with, do I require my team to wear them? Do I want these masks? I've got an expert telling me that they're not worth using if they're not the kind that I can't get. What do I do? So I reminded them, it's like, well, the core values of the business, are to say yes to each other and our customers, are to serve our customers, and to demonstrate that we care about each other as family members. And so these are the established core values. And so it was very easy. So with that framework, then we're going to do anything that might help some and that show that we support, the health and well-being of all of our customers and all of our employees. And then, so that took this really complicated, complex, contentious discussion and made it very clear what the path forward was. So that's an example.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that
Yeah.
example. And that is so present right now. So I completely understand. So, and then the second part of the formula, I wanted to kind of dig in a little bit, maybe get another example. And by the way, folks in the live audience, I totally put Alicia on the spot on that one. She did brilliant. So I just want to acknowledge that. But one of the other things, one of the other steps, so I'm reading it here, is create a believable image of the future. Describe the longer view, which is positive, even if the timeline is uncertain. So far be it for me to say, just like everyone else, like, what the future holds is we're in a very uncertain time. So what's your advice, or what example can you share where you applied that, that part of the formula, creating that believable image of the future, very positively, given what's going on with everything that is uncertain?
Well, maybe I'll share a little bit about some of the internal messages that I've been using with Performentor. It's like we are a small business that serves small businesses. To say that we're feeling some uncertainty, like barely begins to describe it. And we're all remote. Some of us are local to each other, but we can't even see each other anywhere except through video. So I want to remind everybody that our model for delivery is going to be even more powerful. It's going to be even I think a lot of the reasons that maybe some prospects might not use us start to go away. And the reason is that they might say, well, you know what? I can't imagine solving my HR problems by not hiring a full-time person and having them 100% on site. Guess what? They probably aren't going to be held back by that image anymore in the future. So that really puts us in a position of strength on the other side of this, whenever that might be. So I really, that, and in addition to, what we're offering is, through our marriage of people science and senior level strategic HR people, this really puts us in a position to help companies come out the other side of a very difficult time far better than old ways of solving the problem. So, I mean, I sincerely believe that we are in great shape on the other side of this. I just don't know when it is. So that's an example.
Well, I love that example, and I think that's totally appropriate as well. One small business owner to another, I totally understand. But
I
great
feel you.
example. Yeah,
Yeah.
great example. Well, so Alicia, I'll leave it at this. This Mondays with Manny, usually we just do 20, 30 minutes. So we
Mhm,
are roughly about 20 minutes in. And,
mhm,
this is a very hot topic, communicating with teams, making sure that people understand where they are, and where we're going. I've seen a lot of different variety of actions from companies, from layoffs to temporary layoffs to no layoffs. Like there's this huge spectrum of different things that companies are doing, maintaining cash flow, holding cash, not spending, things like that. Um, we've seen it before, but not to this extent, I think.
not quite
At least
like
not in
this.
this country. Yeah. So, I thought it'd be kind of cool if we do a little bit of maybe some parting words with
Mhm,
regards to this dynamic. If you had a client, or if I had a client, we'll kind of take turns. But if we had to give them, one or two tips, if they do nothing else, what is one or two things? And it could be part of the formula, or it could be something you haven't even mentioned yet.
mhm.
If they had to do one or two things to support their teams, what one or two things would that be? Um, and I'll kick it off if you like. So,
Yes.
and then that way we can kind of go back and forth. By the way, you have a comment there. Love it. Would it be possible to get Alicia's email for further questions or suggestions? If you can put it in the chat room if you want. Let everybody know. After the recording, Manny usually opens up to questions for those here. Now, that's right, Selena. Thank you. And so we'll be doing Q&A at the end, just to remind everybody. So stick around. We're just going to wrap it up with this last bit of segment. So, two tips to a client or an organization if they were to ask you, what would you do? What one or two things would you advise us to do in these times of uncertainty to keep our team motivated? So my first one is one that I do tell my clients to do now, is to do what's called the cascaded chat. So make sure that they talk to their people, that their people talk to their people, and go all the way down the organization. So whether you're a small company or a big company, that way you're having a chat about the current state. You don't sugarcoat it. You don't try to get overly emotional about it, but you at least make people know that you're there to talk about it if they need to talk about it, and find out what their concerns are. So have a cascaded chat in the organization, and not just one time, but do it throughout the process of what we're going through. So if we're going through this for the next several months, then have the chat for the next several months. By the way, everyone, my apologies for background noise. I am, like most people, working from home with family and kids that are not in school, so my apologies. Um, but so that's my tip number one: is have those cascaded chats and have it ongoing throughout the whole course of the situation that we're in. Thank you, Rose. I appreciate it. All right, that was my tip number one. Go ahead. What's your tip?
So I would say tip number one, I'm going to piggyback off what you just said because it reminded me of an email exchange I had with another client. I asked him how he runs a large sales team for a software business. And I said, how are you translating on-site communications to remote? And he gave me this wonderful algorithm. He's like, I'm making sure that I touch base with each of my co-senior team lead members. I reach out to each individual at least X times per week. And sometimes it might just mean like a little fist bump emoji, which then just seems to be, he says, permission for anybody to talk about what's on their mind, and he said that formula seems to be working well so far. So yeah, so some sort of cascaded, and maybe if you can kind of create sort of a checklist of how many times have I checked in with each team member in the past week, and that way that just cross-check that and make sure you're not missing anybody.
All right, that's good. So I'll throw in my second tip, and we'll end it at two tips each. So my second tip, and it's related to actually one of the steps, but it's related to sharing people long term kind of where we're going. So I relate that to, in behavioral science we talk about goals and goal setting, but in particular during really immense times of changes we talk about sub goals. So like you have your big goal, so what are the sub goals in between where you are now to where you are in where you want to go in the future? And I find that I'm telling clients a lot is to actually focus more on those smaller sub goals now. So give people something to aim for every day, every week, every month, right? Because they're so uncertain, they're so not sure what they're doing. And this is so present in their everyday conversation, coronavirus, the news, whatever, that they can get lost in that if they're not really lasered focused on something that they can actually achieve for work. So I talk to people a lot about what is your goal for today? What is your goal for this week? What is your goal for this month? Let's just focus on those goals, get those accomplished. So that way, at least you have something to look forward to in terms of an accomplishment based kind of approach to your day to day work. So that's my second tip during these uncertain times of change. So,
Great tip.
all right, what's yours?
So I'm going to make it a hybrid. So on the one hand, cut yourself some slack. I had a CEO come to me and says, like, I don't feel like I'm as effective because I got my family everywhere, and everyone's got their family everywhere. Like, what do I do? I'm like, chill out. It's okay. Your productivity will come back, one way or the other. And well, I forgot what the other half of that was, but maybe it'll come back later. But I think that's a big one. Cut yourself some slack. It'll work out. It's a
I like that.
transitional period.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I think a lot of people are kind of stressing themselves out to a point where of no return, and they have to just kind of take a step back and say, "Okay, wait a minute, wait a minute. Like I
That
can't."
reminds me of the other half. Control what
Okay,
you can control. So they're related. I knew they were related. Can control what you can control. Like I can't control that the schools are out. I can't control the stay-at-home requirements. I can't control all sorts of things. But I can control how I respond. I can control how I communicate. I control some of these small steps and goals that I can put into place for myself and my team. It's the same for any leader. If you get yourself wound up worrying about the stuff that you can't do anything about, you need every drop of energy you can applied appropriately. Don't waste it.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, so Alicia Parr, a Perform Mentor, and my name is Manny Rodriguez. We're going to go ahead and end Mondays with Manny. But thank you so much for joining me today, and for those that attended the live discussion, please stick around. When I end the recording, we will do Q&A with the live audience here. But I really appreciate your time, Alicia. Thank you so much. And for those that are watching the recording, thank you for watching, and see you next time on Mondays with Manny.